Hello, this is a video on another petition I have submitted to whitehouse.gov, and it's regarding the idea that I think citizens should be allowed to vote on issues presented before Congress and or override the votes or positions of their state senators and state house representatives. Now, as I mentioned in another video, uh, the state senators and House representatives, the two houses separately, but together make Congress. Both houses have to agree in order for anything to get done. And that's where we're having some of our problems with Congress getting anything done. Um, Now, on certain issues, like the fiscal cliff and taxing the rich, which is one example I'm going to use in this video, the American public they seem to have a much clearer idea of what they want, but our Congress members can't seem to grasp that, or they're not willing to do what it is we want and deal with it. So that is one reason why I think citizens should be allowed to override the positions of their state senators or state house representatives on issues presented before Congress, and or just be allowed to vote on issues presented before Congress. Uh, Now, another reason why I say that is because what Congress does is at a federal level, and by and large, federal trumps state when it comes to law and stuff like that, which is why it's partly so important. Congress, these are the guys that could change and override the marijuana laws, and they can change the federal stuff, and that's why they are so important, because as we know, federal tends to trump state. However, they don't always do what we want them to, and for various reasons. Maybe they're worried about their position, maybe it's not as an important a deal to them. There's any number of reasons, and the other thing is that they are people too. When they're up there, even though we elected them to do what we want them to, for the most part, to serve us and cast votes the way we want them to in Congress, they get to make a choice. In another video I did on recalls, there was a little section there that senators and House representatives have to balance voting with their conscience versus voting for what we want them to. So that means they get a choice. And if they vote in a way that you don't approve of, there's not much you can do about it. Which is another reason why I think citizens should be allowed to override the positions or votes that their state senators and state House representatives cast in Congress, or be allowed to vote on issues presented before Congress. So with an example of taxing the rich and the super wealthy, it's popular with the American public. And on another page here, apparently, from the page here, the majority of wealthy also support taxing themselves. But again, what we got is some Congress members up there making things very difficult and not getting things done the way we want. Now, this is one issue where I think if citizens were allowed to vote on the issue and cast the vote in Congress, it would be a done deal. Now, they would have to figure out the logistics of it, but if we were allowed to vote and pretty much just straight up tell them, get it done, then they would have to figure out a way to do it. Instead, what we got is them up there making negotiations and not getting anything done, which is no good. So that's one example. Now, marijuana, or legalizing marijuana, there is a much higher amount of support for medical uses versus recreational uses, but we're about split, according to these pages, about 50%. And as you can see here, it also tends to be the older generations tend to be less in favor, while the younger generations and some other groups are more in favor. Now, some of that, it's hard to say. We may just have to wait until some of those older generations are, gone before things will change. But this is another issue that where there's a lot of support. According to here, a survey last year found that 70% favored making it legal for doctors. Now again, what we have is a federal problem because it's still illegal on the federal level. However, Congress could change that. They just aren't, haven't, won't, and for whatever reason. So this is another area where I think if citizens were allowed to cast the vote on Congress on this particular issue, or if we were allowed to override our state senators and state house representatives in the event that they vote no, or are just on the fence or whatever, then we could get it changed and we could get it done. And part of the idea is that our vote would count as Congress's vote, which would in effect make it federal. And that means the change would be federal, not just state and so on and so forth. Now they do have a little breakdown by group here. Liberals 18 to 29, you might be able to read it. We got 69%, 62, 57, 55, 54, 51. More than half of these groups are over 50%. So again, this is an issue where I think if citizens were allowed to vote on the federal level in Congress and or to override the positions of their state senators and whatnot, effectively casting their congressman's vote for them, then this is something we could get done. Like taxing the rich and like this, the American public seems to have a much better idea of what they want done, and for whatever reason Congress is not, they're not getting on the ball with it. So that's one more example of why I think citizens should be allowed to vote on Congress, or on issues presented before Congress, and or override their state senators and House representatives, especially for key hot topic issues. Again, Congress deals with a lot of stuff that most people aren't going to care for or want to mess with. So those are two examples, legalizing marijuana and the fiscal cliff, taxing the rich kind of issue. Now another issue is same-sex marriage. Now I really think this is a personal issue. I don't really think it has any place being a matter of law. I think according to the law, these people should be treated fairly, the same as anybody else. I think they should have the same rights. You know, I'm not really in favor of it per se. I mean, as far as a personal issue, I don't quite get it, but that's just, you know, I don't know how that works. I don't think that way, so on and so forth. But I don't think they should be treated any differently under the law, and I don't think they should be, so I think they should have the same rights under the law. And this is another example where there seems to be a large amount of support for same-sex marriage, increasingly. They're about split again, and again, it seems to be somewhat of a generational divide on this issue. But I think this is another instance where if people were allowed to vote on the issue presented before Congress or whatever and make it a federal thing, then we could get it passed and we could get it done, where a lot of people seem to be kind of doing their own thing. Now this one's a little bit more difficult. You know, it's a pretty, I guess you could say, passionate issue for a lot of folks. But again, if we can get it done on the federal level, which is where it tends to trump state, then we can get things done that we're having so much trouble with. Now the good news for some of this, if I remember correctly, is that the Supreme Court has decided that banning same-sex marriage or whatnot is somewhat unconstitutional. I'd have to look for the cases again, which is a good thing. And again, I think it's really a personal issue. I don't think it should be something that's a matter of law, as far as preventing a group from doing something or having the same rights. I think the law should treat everybody fairly. It really shouldn't take sides one way or the other. But that's for another topic. So this is just one more issue where, you know, a lot of people have people they know who are, you know, bi or gay, or I'm not sure the correct terms, but in any event, and they think it's unfair that they should be treated so differently under the law. But again, it's something you have trouble with when laws get passed, and part of it is because it's federal. The federal definition of marriage is what makes it partly a sticky point, because the federal definition is the definition under which the rights are conveyed, and so on and so forth. So getting it changed at the federal level would be another key issue for getting this thing done and taken care of. But again, that's our congressmen, our state senators, and our House representatives. Now, if they don't seem to be willing to tackle the issue and vote on the issue, the American public, again, seems to be very definitive on certain issues and more willing to tackle it than our congressmen do. So, again, another reason why I think citizens should be allowed to vote on issues presented before Congress and or override their state senators and House representatives' positions and votes in Congress in the event that they don't agree with our positions. Now, as far as the logistics and all that, I'm unsure. It would have to be figured out. I imagine they would have to have some criteria for what issues we could vote on. Because again, there's some things that maybe for security reasons probably are not a good idea for the public to be aware of necessarily. And of course, there's some things they deal with that we don't know much about or aren't going to want to deal with, and so on and so forth. But these are just 3 examples of why I think citizens should be allowed to vote on issues before Congress, because our Congress apparently has some issues once in a while, and they can't seem to get things done that we want done. In the event that that happens, I think there should be a way for citizens to chime in and break the tie, so to speak. Like on the fiscal cliff, we've got a handful of them up there that are making things a pain, while the majority of the nation is very clear for the most part on what they want done. If we were allowed to make the vote, it would be a done deal. They would just have to figure out the logistics of it. So, now I have a petition at whitehouse.gov. You will have to fill out an account. I know it takes a little bit of time. But once you do, you can vote on various petitions. You can create your own petitions. You can sign other people's petitions, and so on and so forth. So if you agree with me that you think citizens should have some way to override their state senators and state congressmen and or to vote on certain key issues presented before Congress, please take the time to sign the petition and send your message. Let them know what you think about that. And look forward to some of my other videos. Thank you for watching.